All right, so good morning, and we're continuing our study of the Revelation. This morning, we have made it up through toward the end of chapter 19 of Revelation, and we're looking at the Battle of Armageddon and the cleanup, which is interesting. The cleanup is actually a primary focus of the morning. It doesn't talk a lot about the battle, but it does talk about the cleanup, which is interesting. So, before we jump straight into that, two things of note. One, I've started something new I haven't done before, and that is anytime we're not in our primary text, the text will be highlighted just to draw attention. These things at a glance look the same wherever you're at because they're all very similar in their structure. So it's just a kind of clue that, we're not in Revelation anymore. I'm gonna highlight the text. I'll try to do that going forward. Number one. Number two, we're going to look at some passages here this morning that are, I think, just something, I just want to make sure you guys see this in the connection to Revelation. I made an allusion to some of these a while back that these are passages related to the Jews understanding who Jesus really is, and how that is in part what brings about the second coming. I've talked about it. I want you to see those. Also, this is sort of, when you do a painting, I'm not a painter, but I've seen, whatever that guy on TV, Bob Ross, right? And he'll wash the whole thing with a blue, and then he starts this is our blue wash, okay? This is our background of Revelation being laid over top. So think of it that way. We're not going to go in depth here, but I want you to see several passages. And fortunately for you all, Ben is here, so this is a lot of reading, in other words, and I'd like you to hear it well done. So, without further ado, when you get done with this one, we'll make a couple comments and then we'll move to the next.
And I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and pleas for mercy, so that when they look on me, on whom they have pierced, they shall mourn for him, as one mourns for an only child, and weep bitterly over him, as one weeps over a firstborn. On that day, the mourning in Jerusalem will be as great as the mourning for Hadad Rimmon and the plain of Megiddo. The land shall mourn, each family by itself, the family of the house of David by itself, and their wives by themselves, the family of the house of Nathan by itself, and their wives by themselves, the family of the house of Levi by itself, and their wives by themselves, the family of the Shimeites by itself, and their wives by themselves, and all the families that are left, each by itself, and their wives by themselves.
So let me cover the non-highlighted part first. It's very repetitive there, but I just want you to kind of get what is he doing there. He's starting with the house of David, and then the priests, Nathan, Nathan would be like the prophets. Then you have the priests and the Levites. So what he's doing is taking a hierarchy of the country. The kings, the prophets, the priests, then the Shimeites, and then everybody else. And he does it by family and the wives by themselves. So what he's trying to do there in that is to communicate every level of Jewish society individually. Not just families, but the families and the wife by themselves, meaning like everybody is what's being talked about there. This isn't just the leaders of the home. No, the wives as well. The family, children. In every strata of Jewish life, there is this mourning. It is this everybody going, oh, what have we done? Because when you read the beginning, and I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and pleas for mercy. Notice, God is the one giving them that. Why are they about to do what they're getting ready to do here? Because God poured this out on them so that when they look on me, Jesus, on whom they have pierced, right? They shall mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and weep bitterly over him. What's being stated here is the Jewish people, finally say, oh my goodness, we we killed our Messiah. And it is heart-wrenching when they finally realize he actually came and we killed him. I mean, it's heart-wrenching for them. And there's this mourning all through the land. Now, what we'll find is that is not universally true in every person in Israel, but it is universally true through all stratas of Jewish society. And you'll see that here in a moment. Go ahead.
But it's not the 144.
No.
It's after that.
This is toward the end.
Okay.
Yeah. This is the next chapter. Go ahead.
Awake, O sword, against my shepherd, against the man who stands next to me, declares the Lord of hosts. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. I will turn my hand against the little ones. And the whole land, declares the Lord, 2/3 shall be cut off and perish, and 1/3 shall be left alive. And I will put this third into the fire and refine them as one refines silver, and test them as gold is tested. They will call upon my name, and I will answer them. I will say, they are my people, and they will say, the Lord is my God.
So awake, O sword, against my shepherd. Jesus is the my shepherd. So God saying of my shepherd, Jesus, against the man who stands next to me, declares the Lord of hosts, strike the shepherd, crucifixion, and the sheep will be scattered. The followers of Christ are scattered when Jesus is killed. I will turn my hand against the little ones. This is a reference to he's turning against Israel for a period of time here. And in the whole land declares the Lord. And now this seems to be moving at the very end now, where it talks about 2/3 will be cut off and 1/3 will be left alive. I mentioned that before. This is when the Antichrist is coming after the Jewish people, and many of them are killed, but 1/3 of the nation at the time are kind of rescued. And it talks about him putting them through fire. We don't know exactly what that means. If you read Left Behind, that was they all gathered in Petra, and the Antichrist shot a nuclear bomb in, and when it went off, they're all standing there like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in a firestorm. We have no idea what this is a reference to. My point is, what's amazing about prophecy, you can't tell me what and when will happen. But once it happens, you can go, that matches exactly. Look, God knew what he was talking about. So it's a great way of validating it after the effect, because it has so many elements that are in detail that all match. But you can't take those details and go forward and predict the future like, okay, on this, that would be divination, which is a bad thing. We don't believe in predicting the future like that. But once an event occurs, you can go back and go, like Jesus, right? He fulfilled 400 prophetic things from the Old Testament. You couldn't have necessarily gone, okay, there he is coming in, at this, looking forward. You have to do it in reverse. So this is where we get that 1/3 of Israel will be saved. All right, let's keep moving.
Behold, a day is coming for the Lord, when the spoil taken from you will be divided in your midst. For I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses plundered, and the women raped. Half of the city shall go out into exile, but the rest of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations, as when he fights on a day of battle. On that day, his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives that lies before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west by a very wide valley, so that one half of the mount shall move northward, and the other half southward. And you shall flee to the valley of my mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach to Azal. And you shall flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah.
So one of the things I want you to see here is, then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations as when he fights on the day of battle. On the day his foot stands on the Mount of Olives. So we're hearing here about the second coming when he comes back and touches down on the Mount of Olives. But there's things here like, half the city will be cut off. Well, in the previous one, it was 2/3 or 1/3, so a lot of this is hard to kind of do this with. That's why I say after the fact, you'll go, I get it. There was this, and it'll all come together in a way that we don't fully understand currently. But we can get these allusions or clues to what's happening. Let's keep going.
Then the Lord my God will come, and all the holy ones with him. On that day there shall be no light, cold, or frost. And there shall be a unique day, which is known to the Lord, neither day nor night, but at evening time there shall be light. On that day living waters shall flow out from Jerusalem, half of them to the eastern sea, and half of them to the western sea. It shall continue in summer as in winter. And the Lord will be king over all the earth. On that day, the Lord will be one, and his name one. The whole land shall be turned into a plain from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem. But Jerusalem shall remain aloft on its site, from the gate of Benjamin to the place of the former gate, to the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananel to the king's winepresses. And it shall be inhabited, for there shall be never again be a decree of utter destruction. Jerusalem shall dwell in security.
Okay, so first thing there at the top, then the Lord my God will come and all the holy ones with him, right? Holy ones, saints. We talked about that last time. That's those on white horses coming in behind Christ at the second coming. Angels and all the saints are coming. It talks there about on the day there shall be no light. Remember, everything goes dark and all you can see is Jesus in brilliance. That's being referenced there. So all these things kind of match up. And so this is why we know we're looking at the second coming. And verse 9 there in the middle, and the Lord will be king over all the earth. That's setting up that millennial kingdom, which is what we'll be looking at hopefully next time. We'll make it through this morning and get to that next time. And then it starts talking about describing of the land and all these places I'm not even going into this morning. This is just more of a quick pass through, but I wanted you to see these. I think this is the last one we have. Go ahead.
And this shall be the plague with which the Lord will strike all the peoples that wage war against Jerusalem. Their flesh will rot while they are standing on their feet. Their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongues will rot in their mouths. And on that day, a great panic from the Lord shall fall on them, so that each will seize the hand of another, and the hand of the one will be raised against the hand of the other. Even Judah will fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of all the surrounding nations shall be collected, gold, silver, and garments in great abundance. And a plague like this plague shall fall on the horses, the mules, the camels, the donkeys, and whatever beasts may be in those camps. Then everyone who survives of all the nations that have come against Jerusalem shall go up year after year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the feast of booths.
All right, so what you're seeing here is the Battle of Armageddon. I pulled this in last time when we were talking about it. It talks about Jesus kind of stomping out people in another passage, Isaiah 63, I think. And I said, that's a figurative thing. He's not literally stomping, physical heads, with a foot. This is kind of what that would look like in real life. There's some kind of either miraculous or whatever. Their flesh just rots and they just kind of come apart. We don't know what that is. Some have talked about it being a nuclear weapon. I mean, there's all kinds of speculation. We have no idea. But when it happens, they're going to go, aha, that's Zechariah 14. You know what I mean? So there's no doubt about what it is when it happens. The thought that came to me last time was in Colossians where it says all things were made by him and by them they consist or they hold together. Literally, he can just stop holding them together and they just, you know what I mean? So that's likely what's being described there. What's interesting though is, and at the very end, 16, and then everyone who survives of all the nations that come against Jerusalem. So we have all these nations of the earth being brought together to make war against the Lamb and his armies. Not everybody in those nations is that way. Many of them have turned to Christ. They're not part of those armies. That's who's being brought into the millennial kingdom then. And they shall go up year after year and worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and keep the Feast of Booths during the millennial kingdom. So people from Egypt who are Christ followers at the end of the tribulation, and all of Egypt goes up to make war on the Lamb, they stay back because they're in hiding. They've been hunted, and they're the ones that are now going into the millennial kingdom. So all these things really start coming together and fitting here right at this very end. So go ahead.
What's the significance of the Feast of Booths? I don't remember that one very well.
And we'll have to probably look at it more detail because when we get to the millennial kingdom, which is coming in the next week or two. But essentially it was, they would come together once a year as a feast, and they would live like in these makeshift tents. And it was a remembrance of their time of wandering in the wilderness.
Okay.
But it was also a time where God comes and dwells with us. So many will make the case that the millennial kingdom is kind of a celebration of the Feast of Booths. It's God being with us. You can kind of make the argument that Jesus was born potentially at like Feast of Booths, God come and being with us. So anyway. We don't know about that one for sure, but go ahead.
When you talk about the armies and then
Mhm.
those who choose to stay behind, okay. So the Bible, very typical, when it went previously, when you talk about and the wives,
Mhm.
if they mention numbers, they're usually talking about the men.
Right, yes,
Okay.
yeah, 5,000.
So this one, they really took and specifically pointed at the women.
Right, on the previous
Yeah.
verses, yep,
So when you say the armies,
right.
we talk about the guys that join up and
the
register
military,
and
yeah.
train the military.
Right.
Is these armies are just regular Joes that decide to?
Don't know. Yeah, we're not explicitly told, but it
Will I
would
be part of the, I won't. be,
No.
But could I be part of the army?
I don't know. I would say this, I don't know. It could likely be an army, an actual, like a military thing, but it could also be all those who are in alliance with the Antichrist are coming together to try to fight back against. And so I don't know, we're not told, so therefore, I don't know how to answer that. Sorry, go ahead.
We do have even people nowadays, even people in the United States that were for Syria.
Right.
And left our country to
Right.
join them to battle,
Yep. Or like World War II, where you had the French resistance, right? So they're part of a military force, so to speak, but they're, farm wives and feeding downed airline, fighter pilots. And so we don't know. I don't want to go beyond what it says, but I think it will make a lot of sense in that moment to the people who see it then.
What about this buying and selling in that day too?
I think we'll see a little bit of that as we move through the morning.
Yeah.
All right, so there's 3 screens we're going to walk through. We're going to just go through all 3 real fast because we've seen one of them already, or 2, I can't remember. Anyway, this is the one we've been in for quite a while. So let's just walk through these all, again, setting a backdrop. We've already seen this, but this will kind of set the stage for where we're headed this morning. Go ahead.
Then I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse. The one sitting on it is called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes are like a flame of fire, and on his head are many diadems. And he has a name written that no one knows but himself. He is clothed in a robe dipped in blood, and the name by which he is called is the Word of God. And the armies of heaven, arrayed in fine linen, white and pure, were following him on white horses. From his mouth comes a sharp sword with which to strike down the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron. He will tread the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God the Almighty. On his robe and on his thigh he has a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Then I saw an angel standing in the sun, and with a loud voice he called to all the birds that fly directly overhead, "Come, gather for the great supper of God, to eat the flesh of kings, the flesh of captains, the flesh of mighty men, the flesh of horses and their riders, and the flesh of all men, both free and slave, both great and small." And then I saw the beast and the kings of the earth with their armies gathered to make war against him who was sitting on the horse and against his army. And the beast was captured, and with it the false prophet who in its presence had done the signs by which he deceived those who had received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped its image. These two were thrown alive into the lake of fire that burns with sulfur. And the rest were slain by the sword that came from the mouth of him who was sitting on the horse, and all the birds were gorged with their flesh. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding in his hand the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain. And he seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and threw him into the pit, and shut it, and sealed it over him, so that he might not deceive the nations any longer, until the 1,000 years were ended. After that, he must be released for a little while.
I'm going to make one quick comment here. This is what we looked at last time. On his robe and on his thigh was written, the name was written, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Somebody asked why on his thigh, found out in battles of that time frame when you'd have like a knight or something. They didn't have knights necessarily then, but on horseback, they would often put like a shield, like our colors, identifying whose side they were on the thigh and on the chest. So when you're fighting, you don't come running up and kill one of your guys because you can't see his chest. They put it down on the thigh as well. Sort of like, you have the flag insignia on the arm of our guys. Similar type thing, where you're sitting up on a horse, they put it on the thigh. So there you go. That answers that. Okay, this is our new section. A lot of this we're just going to kind of walk through fairly quickly. It dawned on me, this one is unlike a lot of the other passages. A lot of them are like, what in the world does that mean? What's this? What's that? Da, 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 da. This is much more narrative. It's just kind of like, here's what's happening. So we'll walk through some of this pretty fast, I think. Then I saw an angel standing in the sun. It does not mean it's standing inside the sun. It just means that it's up in the proximity of the sun. There's this angel out there. And with a loud voice, he called to all the birds that fly directly overhead. Kind of an interesting thing there. If you think of a map, I could have put one on here. I just didn't think to do it till just now. Asia. I'll do it in reverse. For you guys, here's Asia, here's the Mediterranean, here's Israel, and here's a giant desert known as Iraq and Iran and all that. So these birds, they don't like flying across deserts. Up here is Europe. They don't like flying across the Mediterranean. So all these birds funnel through Israel twice a year. It's the largest migration of birds anywhere on earth. They've lost more airplanes in Israel to birds than anything else. They've had to do all kinds of things to try to figure out, okay, this type of bird on these certain days a year fly at about this altitude, so everybody's flying under it or below it as they're coming into Ben Gurion Airport and stuff like that. It's a major problem they have to deal with currently. Isn't that interesting that God, knowing that he'll need to bring them all in to clean up the carnage, has set it up to where all these birds fly through that area every year, twice a year, up and back. And at one of these, they're going to have a nice, great supper of God. Interesting. Come, gather for the great supper of God, to eat the flesh of kings, the flesh of captains, the flesh of mighty men, the flesh of horses and their riders, and the flesh of all men, both free and slave, both small and great. So to your question, this is as close as I think we get to an answer, which is it's not just, the Navy SEALs that are showing up, it's everybody. There's a bunch of folks there, slave and free and small and great and minor Minor and major is small and great. Not stature, but, insignificant people like me and important people, that kind of a thing. But also kings and captains and mighty men, men of warrior type men. Go ahead.
I see it almost like what we're seeing today with the riots and the protests. It's everybody just joining in,
Yeah,
bringing everybody in there.
yeah,
There is people in charge,
sure.
but there's.
But it's just, everybody's just sort of showing up, yeah. We'll see some of that, let's see. I've got so many things tucked in here and I don't know where I have them, so I try not to comment about things that are yet to come because I'll talk about it here in a few minutes, but I don't remember where. Is the great supper of God the same as what is described in Ezekiel 39, 17, and 18? You're going, what is in Ezekiel 39, 17, and 18? All right, so let me just really quick, there's a battle mentioned in Ezekiel 38 and 39, and it is an invasion of a multitude of different nations against Israel. They come to capture, plunder, spoils. They're not there to try to wipe out the Jews because they hate them. They're there because there's something of wealth that Israel has. Israel is now an incredibly prosperous nation. Those nations are listed, and there are things like Persia, right? Well, we don't have Persia, but what we have is modern Persia, which is known as Iran. When you start taking all these names and you start going back and saying, who is Rosh? Okay, that's Russia. And it's not because it starts with an R, it's because that's where Rosh was, and it's now we know as Russia. It mentions Libya. Well, guess where that's at? It's Libya. So we have a lot of these different things. What's very interesting is if you were to go back 50 years, Turkey, people from Turkey vacationed in the Mediterranean in Israel. Persia, Iran, was one of Israel's best allies under like the Shah, things of that nature. Saudi Arabia was a huge enemy of Israel, right? So now what you're seeing is this huge shift. Now Iran is wanting to wipe out Israel. Turkey is very upset with Israel. Russia, by the way, those three have never been allies at any time in world history, and today they're all on Israel's northern border in the Syrian conflict. Kind of interesting. Those are three that are said to come against Israel on the mountains of Israel, right there by the Syrian border. There are nations that are mentioned that will speak it, saying that's not right what you guys are doing. They don't come to their defense, but they speak out in opposition to what's happening, and they're things like Saudi Arabia, and I think it's Egypt. Well, Egypt and Saudi Arabia today are not unfriendly to Israel. Like Egypt has a peace treaty with them. And then now we're starting to see these other treaties like with the Arab Emirates and stuff like that. And maybe more to come. So what's interesting is what we're seeing right now, like on the front page, is the aligning of all these forces that are going to come against Israel and those who will be saying, no, that's bad, you shouldn't do that. Now, no one comes to her defense except God, and this is not the point of the morning, so I'm just giving you a quick snapshot. That's Ezekiel 38 and 39. So you'll often hear it just referred to as the Battle of Ezekiel 38 and 39 if you're just reading and talking prophecy stuff. There's this section in Ezekiel 39 where it speaks of As for you, son of man, thus saith the Lord, speak to the birds of every sort and to all the beasts of the field. Assemble and come and gather from all around to the sacrificial feast that I am preparing for you, a great sacrificial feast on the mountains of Israel, where this battle has just taken place in 38. And you shall eat the flesh and drink the blood. You shall eat the flesh of the mighty, drink the blood of the princes of the earth. Sounds very similar, right? I don't think it's the same one though, and I'll tell you why. But there are folks who do think it's the same one. And so they think this battle of 38 and 39 of Ezekiel is the battle of Armageddon. I don't think that's the case, but I don't want to fight with them about it because we won't know until it happens. They have reasons to think that it is. I have reasons to think that it isn't. To me, this is one of those things we can say, okay, love you, brother, and move on to the next thing. Okay, so these aren't the type of things we would fight about. But I'll show you why I don't think so. But go ahead.
Is that invasion, isn't that the first 3.5 years that invasion?
See, and there's all kinds of different things. I think this potentially could happen prior to the rapture, or immediately after the rapture, but before the tribulation begins. We really have no indication at all as to when this battle happens. So it could be just dropped in at any point. We don't know when it will happen. And my point is, there's no reason it can't happen prior to the rapture. So it could. There's no reason to think that it will, but I'm just saying there's nothing to say that it can't. This is the next set of verses. All the people of the land will bury them. It starts talking about burying these dead, right? And it will bring them renowned on that day, and I will show my glory, declares the Lord. What we think is being talked about there is God is really the only one that rescues Israel. By the way, Israel comes out of this very good. You've got all these superpowers coming against Israel, and they're fine because God miraculously protects them. They will, then this is talking about the cleanup. They will set apart men to travel through the land regularly and bury those travelers remaining on the face of the land so as to clear it. So this is talking about a cleanup, not of Armageddon, I don't think, but of this Ezekiel 38:39. And at the end of 7 months, they will make their search. And when these travel the land, and anyone sees a human bone, then he shall set up a sign by it till the buriers have buried it in the valley of Armageddon. Harma is also the name of the city. Thus they shall clean up the land. I don't know why I'm stumbling all over it right now. Here's the point. It's talking about a 7-month period of cleaning up these bodies. It's also interesting that if someone finds a bone, they don't bury it, they mark it for the professionals to come in and get it and bury it. So does God send some sort of a disease on them as they're invading, and that's why they can't just go grab the bone? They have to have people with hazmat suits come do it? We don't know. We have no idea. I'm not projecting that onto it. I'm saying there's something odd there that will completely make sense.
Radioactivity?
Yeah, radioactivity is possible. The issue there would be, to me, the whole land would be radioactive, not just the bones, right? But if it's a pathogen, can't touch that, so who knows is the point. We don't know. The point I want you to see is a 7-month cleanup. That's the point. So now let's look at this. Remember back in Revelation chapter 12, and the woman fled into the wilderness. Okay, so this is the woman clothed with the sun, standing on the moon, I think, and has the 12 stars around her head. There's a great red dragon. He's trying to eat the child she's about to deliver. She delivers the child. And then it says, and the woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared by God in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. We identified the woman at the time as Israel. It's not, she's getting ready to give birth to a child, but it's not Mary. I mean, it's a symbol of something, and the symbol is it's symbolic of Israel. This is that time at the middle of the tribulation. The Antichrist breaks the treaty, sets up an altar to himself, we think. We're not sure exactly what he's going to do, but he's going to set up the abomination to make desolate, and he's going to end their sacrifices. So what we think that's referring to is the Antichrist comes in and establishes himself as God in the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. That's the halfway point. That starts the Great Tribulation, which is the last 3.5 years, 42 months, and here it identifies it as 1,260 days. So there's a 1,260-day period from when they flee. If you move down to verse 17, it says, then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who kept the commands of God and hold on to the testimony of Jesus. So this is this last 3.5 years, the 1260 days. This is the Great Tribulation. You have tons of things happening during that time. We've looked at all of that. My point is it's a very specific period of days from the center of the tribulation to the second coming of Christ, 1260 days. And this is the part where Christians and Jews throughout the world are being killed. And there are those martyrs we see in Revelation in different passages. So here's what's happening. If you go to Daniel 12, it says this, and he said, "Go your way, Daniel, for the words are shut up and sealed until the time of the end." So he's been given this great revelation, and he said, "Now don't tell anybody." Okay, right? "Many shall purify themselves and make themselves white and be refined, but the wicked shall act wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but those who are wise shall understand." Doesn't mean if you don't understand you're stupid. It means God enlightens those that are his and they get it, and if you're wicked, you don't get it. But these are referring to the time of the end, okay? At the time of the end, from the time that the regular burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate is set up, there shall be 1290 days. Until what? "Blessed is he who waits and arrives at the 1335 days. But go your way till the end, and you shall rest and shall stand in your allotted place at the end of days." That's it. We have literally no idea what 1290 and 1335 reference, because it's been sealed up. We're not allowed to know what it is. My point is, there's 1260, second coming. 30 days later, something happens, 1290, and then another 45 days after that, something else happens. So you've got a total of about 75 days from the second coming till something occurs, 30 plus another 45. Blessed is he who waits and arrives at the 75 days after the second coming. I don't know what that is, but I don't think we're cleaning up bodies for 7 months after the 75th day after the second coming. Something is established. My thought is it's the millennial kingdom. And I'll talk about why I think that when we get to the millennial kingdom. My point is, to me, this is one reason why I think Ezekiel, the description there, yes, it's talking about birds eating people, but it also talks about animals eating people. I mean, it's not just a bunch of birds coming in. It's beasts of the fields and all kinds of stuff. I think that's just a common way of expressing cleanup after battle. I mean, if you've ever seen Lord of the Rings and there's an after battle scene with all these birds flying around, right? I mean, that's just a common thing. It's a common expression that birds eating the flesh of mighty men, right? So just because you see that wording doesn't necessarily, oh, that has to be Armageddon. That's the only time in human history birds have eaten people after a battle. You know what I mean? We don't have to go there. This is slim, I get that, and that's why there's differing opinions on it. This isn't something rock solid, but I do think, and I've stated it carefully, it seems that they are different events. The passages in Ezekiel and the Armageddon, I think, are two different battles. If you disagree, I love you. All right, back to our main passage. This is what we just looked at. Moving to the next. "And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth with their armies gathered to make war against him who was sitting on the horse and against his armies." So this is the battle of Armageddon, right? "I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies," again, we don't know exactly who all that includes, "gather." Why are they gathering at Armageddon? Why are they coming together? "To make war against him," Jesus, "who sits on the horse, and against his armies," us, and the angelic people coming with him. That's kind of amazing. Amazingly stupid in the sense that, hey, this is good, let's go fight God. Okay, I don't think that's going to work well for you, and we know that it doesn't, obviously, because we've already read that. But let's go look at this. There's a couple different things I think that are good to see here. "As for the beast that was and is not, it is an eighth, but it belongs to the seven. You may remember this passage. And it goes to destruction. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour, together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They make war on the Lamb. How do they do that? Well, they do it in several ways, but one of them is Battle of Armageddon. They're gathering together to make war on him on the horse, the Lamb. And the Lamb will conquer them, stomps them like grapes. Flesh rots on their bone. We've seen all that. That's how he does it, in part. For he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings, right? It's describing the same scene. And then again, this thing I've found most encouraging in the book of Revelation. And those with him are called and chosen and faithful. I've hit that numerous times. I won't take the time this morning. Maybe get the door, just so it doesn't get loud in a minute. It says, then I saw, and this is our same section again. All right. And the beast was captured, and with it the false prophet. So here are the beast and the false prophet. Now, a couple of things really quick. And the beast was captured, and with it doesn't say him. That's weird, because it's a him. How do we know it's a him? Because he's about to be thrown in the lake of fire, and you don't throw governments into the lake of fire. You throw people into the lake of fire. I've talked about it several times. You see the beast or the Antichrist being talked about as a thing and as a person at different times. This is one of those times they say it, but we also know he's about to be thrown into the lake of fire, and only people and angels go there. So just pay attention to that. It's not, when it says it does not mean it's not a person. Now, this false prophet, it's describing who is that? Who in its presence had done the signs by which he deceived those who had received the mark of the beast and those who worshiped its image. That's a description simply thrown in there to remind you, okay, that's who this false prophet guy is, right? So let's go look at that. When we saw this originally, I want to just remind you of who this guy is. This is back in chapter 13. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. The first beast described was the Antichrist. This is the false prophet. And it had 2 horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. We spent a long time talking about, it's a way of communicating that he was very deceitful and very sneaky in the way that he spoke. He looked like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon. And it doesn't mean like deep rumbly voice. It means deception. He's able to deceive. It exercises all the authority of the first beast, or of the Antichrist, and it's in its presence, and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the beast. This is the one who makes everyone worship the Antichrist. Antichrist being, or the beast, whose mortal wound was healed. That's how we know it's the Antichrist. It performs great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in front of the people. And by the signs that it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on the earth. Those who dwell on the earth, again, that's another way of saying the unsaved. That's used that way throughout the book. Telling them to make an image for the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. Go ahead.
Satan's always trying to imitate
Yes.
what Christ has done, because he is an angel of light.
Yep.
Would this false prophet be a type of John the Baptist?
Yeah, could be.
A forerunner?
Right. I don't think forerunner would be. Many have said Satan, the Antichrist, and the false prophet are like a unholy trinity.
Right, unholy.
So he would be like the Holy Spirit version type
Okay.
in that analogy. The rest of this then goes on to say, and it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. And we saw that all through the rest of the book. Also, it caused all, small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of man, and his number is 666. So the point I want to draw out here real quick. When we talked about this 6-8 months ago, we lived in a different world. Today, they're talking about things like mandatory vaccines and the whole mask thing that we're about. And there are people within the church who are making the case that the vaccine and the little micro things in the vaccine, like a marker type thing, so you can be scanned to see if you've gotten the vaccine, all that. They're talking about that being the mark of the beast. And I just wanted to kind of clear that up the best I can, is to say the vaccine is not the mark of the beast. The mask is not the mark of the beast. However, I do think this is setting the stage for the mark of the beast. We're living for the first time in an era where at one point here in Indiana, it was, if you don't wear a mask in public, could go to jail for 180 days. The governor decided maybe that was a little more than he should have done, and he backed off of that. But the fact that seemed like a good idea for 15 minutes is a bad thing, right? That's next, in other words. It's not like, we never thought of that. Well, actually, you did thought of it, and then politically decided maybe that wasn't a good thing yet. So my point is, they're making the case that constitutionally they can require everyone to get the vaccine, whether you want it or not. That's like bizarre 2 years ago, right? That's like commonplace conversation on a talk show today. And I'm not, like late night with alien encounter talk shows, but like, that's like a real thing we're thinking about. They're not the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is about the worship of the Antichrist. But we're now setting people's mind and thinking up to make that it's normal to be required to do X to be allowed to participate in the economy. That's never been there, and now we're there. And again, this isn't the mark. Whether I take whether I take the vaccine or not is something, it's a kind of a different issue. That's not, but if you were to take the vaccine, it doesn't mean, oh my gosh, I just took the mark of the beast and now I can't go to heaven. It's not what that's about.
That's what freaked me out so much about everybody suddenly falling to their knees and kneeling. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that isn't about
It's
kneeling.
not about this, but it's a similar thing, yeah.
You must do this to be politically correct, so
Yeah.
on your knees. So now everybody's.
We've established the precedent that it's okay to kneel before people, yeah. We are living in days that I mean, if I had talked about some of that when I went through this, it would have seemed very science fiction-y. We're 6 months later and it's like, oh yeah, you know what I'm saying? So I really don't want to go too derailed here because I'd like to keep going, but go ahead.
They've got people swarming restaurants, and if you don't raise your fist, you're in essence,
A bad guy, yeah.
you're forcing people to do that,
Yeah.
or you'll come to harm, and that kind of thing never happened before.
Yeah.
And now it's becoming common.
These two, Hutu, not the African Hutus, the beast and the false prophet, that's who we're talking about. These two were thrown alive into the lake of fire with sulfur. So I want you to catch the fact that it's saying they are thrown alive into the lake of fire. That will be relevant here in a minute. Later in the same chapter, chapter 10, and the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire. So the devil later, after the millennial kingdom, is thrown into the lake of fire, where the beast and false prophet were, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. they're still there. 1,000 years later, they're still there being tormented. Then in verse 14, then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death, the lake of fire. The second death, they're thrown alive into the second death. It starts to get a little like, no what, right? So I have this question on your sheet. Wait a minute. What is the difference between the bottomless pit, Sheol, Hades, the grave, Gehenna, hell, the second death, and the lake of fire? And I could probably put a couple more on there. These are all different terms throughout the Old Testament, New Testament. And remember, if you remember this or not, I remember it because I was getting pushback at the time. When death and hell followed after the rider on the black horse, or the pale horse it is, and it was death and Hades, and somebody asked, is Hades, is that hell? And I said, I don't think so. Why? Because here it says death and Hades are thrown into the lake of fire. Death and Hades are thrown into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is hell, so you can't throw hell into hell. So to me, there's a distinction there, and we had that discussion at the time. So I wanted to come back to this, and we will actually maybe revisit this more when we get to that verse, but I wanted to kind of give you a quick answer. The top is just that same answer shrunk down enough to make room for the answer. Sheol is the Old Testament word for the grave. It is the Hebrew word for grave. Think of it that way. Hades is the New Testament word for the grave. So when you see Hades, now here's what's confusing. If you take a King James, it conveys Hades, which is a separate word, and Gehenna, which is they're two different Greek words, and they translate both of them hell. That's confusing. Why would you do that? So you get to ESV and some of the other translations, they, for clarity's sake, do hell and Hades. They just differentiate. There's two different Greek words. Let's get two different English words so you can see that they're different, right? The second death is the lake of fire. It is the place of final judgment for all the unrighteous, Satan, demons, false prophet, Antichrist, and all human beings throughout human history that have rejected God. So when I say all the unrighteous, I'm saying all of them, as in everyone who's not going to spend eternity in heaven. That's who that is. We generally refer to that as hell. That's how we would call it. And Jesus called it Gehenna, or he talked about it being eternal punishment. Gehenna is actually a valley outside of Israel, or Jerusalem, where they used to sacrifice baby sacrifices. So why he referred to it that way, there's thought on that, but I just wanted you to see there are distinctions about how that's used. This is interesting. I'll just talk about this kind of quickly. Let's see. Jesus uses, in the King James, it quotes Jesus saying hell 17 times. 4 of those, he actually doesn't use Gehenna, he uses Hades. He uses the other word. And if you go to the ESV, it actually says Hades in 3 of the 4. One, it actually keeps it saying hell, even though he uses a different word. And it is this one. And I say also unto you, thou art Peter, and upon this rock I shall build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. He did not say that. He said, and the gates of Hades shall not. The grave. The gates of the grave will not prevail against the church. Now, how does that change the understanding of that? Subtly, but it doesn't come across quite the same. The problem is it's one of the most famous verses. So when they're doing ESV, I think they're like, well, we can't change that one. So they just left it hell. I don't know why else they would do it. Literally, it is the only time in the ESV or these other translations they use hell where Jesus said grave. So I don't know why they do that.
What's the verse?
It is Matthew 16:18. It's a very famous one, and it's on too many T-shirts to change the translation at this point. So I think that's what their thinking was.
I
Go
looked
ahead.
that up years ago and you can, say,
Confirm.
okay, no, that's not the way it is, but I heard it was, I think in Strong's, it was like a place of departed
Yes.
spirits. okay?
Sheol. Yep.
That Abraham's bosom.
Same
where
one,
there's a
yep.
gulf fixed between the
Yep.
righteous and the unrighteous, Lazarus
Yep.
and the rich man.
Yep. That is Sheol,
Yeah,
grave, Hades. Abraham's bosom will be another one. I could have thrown that one in. When I said I could list some more, that's one I didn't include. Yep. Yep. These two were thrown alive into the lake of fire, and that is a great place to end because we're at time, and the next part is the whole next screen. So maybe we'll just stop there, and then I'll be able to work through the rest of that, and then we'll have time maybe for questions or whatever. One of the reasons is I'd like for us to look at the other part of this question, which is bottomless pit. Actually take some time to really go through that. That's kind of a fascinating one, and we've looked at it before, but it's been a while. So we'll take some time on that one. So that's it. Let me end on this. I will go ahead and tell you this one real quick. The rest were slain by the sword that came from the mouth of him who sat on the horse. So what that's referencing is these two, the beast and the false prophet, they go immediately into the lake of fire, but they're there by themselves for the 1,000 years where Satan is bound over here in the bottomless pit. And then all the other armies, those who come to make war on the Lamb, they are slain with the sword from his mouth. That's the ones whose flesh is rotting and blah, blah, blah. Why? Because their judgment isn't until the end of the 1,000 years at the great white throne judgment. They're headed to the grave. They're headed to the bad side of Abraham's bosom, so to speak. It's bad. I mean, it's a really bad place, but it is not yet quite the lake of fire. They haven't made it to the second death yet because they have not become before the great white throne judgment yet.
The beast and the
A false prophet.
are thrown in
Right.
alive.
Yes.
Alive.
And-
And those people get thrown in spirit.
Well, they are resurrected into a resurrected
Okay.
body. And I think the beast and the false prophet, they experience their mortal bodies are transformed the same way ours would be at the rapture. Like we don't die, but we become a new body, a resurrected body. Not through death, but through resurrection. This would be the version of that, only they're going straight from life right into the resurrected body, which goes into the lake of fire. Everybody else isn't resurrected until the end, and then they are resurrected into a resurrection body, which doesn't ever go away or die, and then it is thrown into the lake of fire. And we'll look at it in more detail later. Last comment, and then I'm going to pray for us.
the unrighteous right now
Yes,
that were not saved
yes,
in this time period
Yes.
are in a place of torment.
yes,
But they will go before in their resurrected bodies for the white throne
Yes.
judgment, and then will be cast into the lake of fire.
yes, yep.
But right now, they are in a place of
It is
torture.
a type of hell.
Yes, type
Yeah,
of hell.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let me, really quick, death, I've said this 100 times in here, but just to clarify it. Death means separation.
Mhm.
The second death is the second separation. So the first death is you're separated from your body and your family, and you're separated from the life you know. You're now into a state of punishment. And then at the great white throne judgment, you're now face to face with God, and you really are real. And now you're separated forever from him.
Mhm.
It's the second death. It's the one that you don't die again. You are now separated again, but now you're separated from God, who you've met with face to face.
Mhm.
That's what the whole second death is about.
You're explaining non-believers.
Non-believers, right. Believers, this is interesting. When we are saved, we die to self. We die our second death, so to speak, first, and then we're brought back to life by Christ. right? We were born separated from God, but we die to self. We're dying of death, burial, resurrection, baptism, right? We get to experience our death first so that Christ can then resurrect us spiritually, and now we're in communion with God. So then when we die physically, we go straight into his presence. And we never die the second death because we did that earlier when we got saved. My point is, it's not an order thing. It's a what's happening thing. Don't get confused by first death, second death. One, the one is about physically dying. The second is about being separated from God. It's not about, it's a type of death rather than an order of it. Go ahead.
So everybody has eternal life.
Yes, absolutely.
Everybody. It just depends on where you're going to spend it.
Exactly right. Exactly
A lot of
right.
people think you only get eternal life if you become a Christian.
Yeah.
That's
But
not really true.
Their eternal life is death. It's an eternal death, but it's a conscious death. That's why we don't use the term, because death is separation. Again, as soon as you replace death and separation, all of this stuff starts making sense. That's why I hit it so often. I have one other question over here, and then I am going to shut it down. Go ahead,
You guys
Julie.
answered it.
Oh, we do? Okay. All right. I know you're not like in a hurry to go to like church. It doesn't start for 25 minutes, but I am trying to be somewhat conscious of your time. All right. Let's pray. You're welcome. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for your word. I say that so often, and it is not rote or habit. It is, we are just grateful. So many things in the world today are so upside down, confused, so much deception, so many lies, so many people we don't know who to trust. So many of the folks we thought were the good guys turn out not to be. Again, this week we saw someone who claimed to be a follower of yours fall away. I am just so grateful that we know we are always able to rely on you, that you love us, that while we were still sinners, you rescued us. Not because of anything we've done, but because you're God and you love us and you wanted to. Your word communicates all of that to us, and it does it in a clear way. We don't have to be confused about what's coming. I say clear not because you can just sit down and read it and it all makes sense immediately, but because you've given us all the facts we need to dig for the truth and find it. You have created for us a repository of all the truth we need in your word. We're so grateful for that, especially in days like we're living right now, when truth is in such short supply. Lord, I pray that you'd continue to see each of us through this coming week, bring us back together safely. Lord, I pray that you'd again create in each of us a boldness. I always think of Paul. He's getting beaten every other day for preaching the word, and he asks a church to pray that he might be more bold. So no matter what we're doing, we could do more than we are, if that's true of Paul. Help us to live these days in light of the fact that we're nearing the end, and live like it. And we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.